Good evening, viewers. Welcome to join us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television tonight. The Supreme Court sitting in for the Constitutional Council has been busy the whole of today examining the various petitions filed in by political parties who participated in the just ended September 30th elections. And so far, the court has not ruled in favor of any of the 41 litigations. And also in this newscast, the president of the Gambia has said quitting the International Criminal Court is not an option for African leaders. He was speaking in the economic capital Douala today while on transit to Ethiopia for the AU summit. Plus, malaria kills 15 in a month in the far north region of the country, and there are indications that the death toll might witness an increase if nothing is done. These are headlines, details and more just in a moment. Good evening to viewers. Welcome to join us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television. Let's begin right away here in the economic capital Douala. As we announced in the headlines, the president of the Gambia has expressed disgust over what he described as lack of respect by the West of the African Union. President Yahya Jammeh was speaking today in the economic capital Douala while on transit to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia for the special AU summit. He called for collaboration between the African Union and the Security Council of the UN. Yahya Jammeh further underscored the need for African leaders not to relent in their fight at the International Criminal Court. Let's listen to what he has to say. He spoke to our reporter, Eric Fenan Kwamo.
From the beginning, I stood against it. That we Africans approve anything that the West bring before even knowing what it is all about. So I told them that we have to be very careful that this penal court, International Criminal Court, cannot be used against us. But then, as a continental organization, they say, oh, we must sign, we must ratify it. Is in Africa's best interest because we have some countries harboring rebels against others, and then they cited the case of Sierra Leone and Liberia and others. I said, okay, but let us know all what it entails before we sign up to it. Then the majority signed. I'm always seen as anti-West. I'm not anti-West. But we have been colonized for so long and we have been taken for granted. The West decide what they want for us. They decide to send us a boss, and all Africa has to say, go in. And then when you enter, you realize that you are going to a desert, and you say, what are we doing here? So I told them, before you enter the bus, know what the destination. Then the first example was El Bashir of Sudan. They decided, the matter was, the Security Council decided that he should go to the ICC, and then they issued an international arrest warrant. We have been fighting to make sure that at least we are respected as a continental organization. People were divided, and you know, I was always seen as the one who is the bad boy, l'enfant terrible de l'Afrique.
Talking about the special AU summit taking place at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Ethiopia's foreign minister opened the African Union summit with an outright attack on the International Criminal Court. He criticized what he called total unfairness and unacceptable manner in which Africa is being treated by the West. And just to note that several nations have been accused by the ICC for placing sanctions only on Africa. And we remain with the visit of the Gambian president, Yahya Jammeh, has referred to Roger Milla of Cameroon as a source of inspiration to young footballers in his country. And before boarding a plane for Addis Ababa for the AU summit, he he insisted to have a tete-a-tete with the Cameroon's roving ambassador. At the international airport was Eto Rosalie Fleur.
Yahya Jammeh had only a very short time to spend at the Douala International Airport, but he insisted to have a chat with Cameroon's roving ambassador, Roger Milla. Jammeh called Milla one of the best football players in the continent. Young footballers back in this country, Gambia, are inspired by the former Cameroonian football player. Roger Milla is an icon in the eyes of Gambians, Jammeh says. The former striker deserves honor, not only for his past exploits as footballer, but also as an actual roving ambassador. The Gambian president had to speak in the French language for a better communication between both friends. It is not his first time on Cameroonian soil. Yaya Jammeh said he will pay another visit. He invited the roving ambassador to his country.
Eto Rosalie Fleur ending that report. As we announced in the headlines, the Supreme Court sitting in for the Constitutional Council has so far not ruled in favor of any of the 41 petitions that were filed in by grumbling politicians who participated in the just ended legislative elections. Amongst the rejected files is, the MRC of Professor Maurice Kamto, which demanded the annulment of the elections in Vorisant. Even the CPDM file calling on the cancellation of the results in Kumba Center was rejected, likewise that of the SDF in Menchum South. Meanwhile, the SDF petition in the Fakoho West has simply been adjourned. And 15 persons have died in a month, that is in this month of October, of malaria in the far north region of Cameroon. The annual statistics of the deadly killer stands at 600. Roland Akong now reports that the malaria problem is also being compounded by lack of antiretroviral drugs. His report.
As the spread of malaria heightens in the far north region of Cameroon, patients now receive treatment under trees in lieu of hospitals. Health structures can no longer contain the huge influx of patients hit by the bad sick. Scores of persons have died this month of the prevalent disease. 600 plus is the number of deaths recorded in 1 year. Malaria, it is said, derives from rainfall and dirty environment due to poor hygiene and sanitation. At many far north health structures, there are no antiretrovirals. The drugs against HIV/AIDS run constantly out of stock. This to the embarrassment and dissatisfaction of patients. We are told here that antiretrovirals are supplied once a month and that they get finished before the month ends due to high demand. The health problems of the far north need the attention of Cameroonian health authorities.
And 2 huge dogs attacked and killed a shop owner that was in Bonaberry early today in the economic capital Douala. The incident this morning unfolded as the victim was on his way to open his shop. Security forces who rushed to the scene of the incident had one of the dogs killed. We surely shall be coming back to that in our subsequent editions. And today is the National Orientation Day, an opportunity to take a look at the place of guidance counselors in the academic milieu. And Jacques Ekwe Kinge reports that they are the gateways to a child's choice of career. His report.
Being one of the recent fields introduced in the school curriculum, guidance counseling in schools have proven beyond doubt of its importance in the academic and professional orientation of students in their upbringing. The educational system in Cameroon has made provision for the training of guidance counselors in the Higher Teachers Training College. But what is the role of a guidance counselor?
The counselor is there to help the students organize their time, how to organize their time to study. The guidance counselor is there to help these students to know the various series after a certain level of education, what they can do in future.
Government High School Makepe served as the venue for the celebration of the 2013 edition of the Guidance Counselors Day. The occasion brought together students and teachers from different public and private colleges in Douala to ponder on the importance of this day and the role played by the guidance counselors.
One of the main duties is psychopedagogy. That is, we guide students as far as studies are concerned. Like the theme for this year, learning difficulties, falls squarely in the area of psychopedagogy.
Though not directly concerned with giving lessons, The guidance counselor used this day to enumerate some of the problems faced by their corps, which includes numerical difference with other teaching corps, with just one counselor for about 250 students. He also raised the problems of inadequate didactic materials to help them in the execution of their job. Owing to the importance of their job in the well-being of the students, the guidance counselors are therefore called upon to fully execute their duties for a better academic and career orientation of tomorrow's human resource.
And the question of who is better placed to orientate a child still remains a big problem. Parents are said to be misleading their children in their academic decisions. Jacques Ekwekinge spoke to some students in the economic capital Douala today and compiled the following report.
The choice of academic or professional studies in Cameroon and Africa in general is one of the most difficult things that confronts youths of school-going age today. This has led many a times to making the wrong choices, either because it was the choice of the parents, friend, or even the school guidance counselor. For some, the choice of their parents is the most welcome.
Myself, and I also myself doing science subject because I love a high knowledge of doing science subjects.
Because I love literature, I love Spanish and English and French. That is why I decided to do art.
Meanwhile, others feel their personal choices is just the best for them.
No, it was my personal influence because the world of tomorrow is just in commerce, economics, accounting, and I see very passionately. It's very passionate for me to be doing a series like that.
I decided to do the science just because of my personal likeness and because I love everything considering matter, solving, discovering, carrying on experiments.
That notwithstanding, the personal choice of the student will always be the best, as this comes from the child's personal ability and capability. This also goes a long way to avoid regrets in the future, to say, had I known.
Still in the academic milieu, we talk about the day for the girl child that is also being commemorated today. Teachers are saying that sex education is pivotal for girl children and that parents should take it as a principal responsibility. Pamela Ndukong sought to find out from some young girls in the economic capital Douala how much knowledge they have on the subject. She put together the following report.
The fulfillment of girls' education is the first and foremost obligation and moral imperative. There is overwhelming evidence that girls' education, especially at the secondary level, is a powerful transformation for societies and girls themselves. Some girls feel at the age of 16, 17, they are free and should be taught sex education, why not even experience it?
I myself, I can take an example of myself. I've already experienced it at my age, but not every girl.
While some other girls of the secondary school contradicts the idea and say their priority should be studies first.
It's not yet the right time. All we have to focus now on is on education because it will help us.
It is not because it will make you not to be attentive.
Uzuamaka Grace, a secondary school teacher, says it is advisable for teachers like parents to educate their children on issues relating to human sexuality.
Because if you don't explain to them, they will learn it from outside.
The relationship between parents and their girl children is also a cause for consent.
I take my daughter, I try to teach her everything about sex education very early. Because if I don't teach her my way, she'll go out and learn it in a very bad way.
Joy Chiwendu says she has a very close and cordial relationship with her parents, especially her mother. While Mbang Natalie says the reverse is true.
My relationship between me and my parents are very strict because I'm a girl, so they are very strict with me more than my brothers.
What you note is that the theme of this year's International Day of the Girl Child, Innovating for Girls' Education, is a clear proof that girls have rights to education in all aspects.
And in the far north region of the country, precisely in the locality of Mariwa, there are some customs and traditions that are working at the detriment of young girls in that part of the country. In that part of Cameroon, young girls as young as 12 years old are sometimes forced to end their studies prematurely as a result of some customs and traditions. And Befokwa looks at the situation in Mariwa and now tells us that it's been practiced practiced out of ignorance. His report.
The practice of forced marriage of underage girls is common amongst the Hausa and Fulani ethnic groups, whose traditions support the custom despite the detrimental psychological, biological, and sociological consequences young girls suffer. The practice is not intrinsically Islamic and can affect girls in any hinterland community in Cameroon. In Maroua, the capital of the far north region, the tradition upholds that a girl as young as 12 years old can be forcefully married. The case of a young girl named Selena, an example of several, was taken up by the Maroua branch of the Association for the Fight Against Violence Towards Women. After being married involuntarily while in class 6 at the age of 14, she left her husband after repeated domestic violence, taking her 2 children with her. Returning to her parents for support, her father insisted she go back to the marriage in exchange for her education to continue. They refused to pay my school fees because I would not go back to the marriage. They told me that if I returned to my husband, then I would continue my education. I could not accept because I knew it was a false promise. Many girls have been deceived like this here. Aside from disrupting the education of young girls, forced marriage at such a young age disrupts the individual's mental maturity as the teenage and adolescent stages of development are compromised. Biologically, girls below the age of 16 carry higher risk of infant or maternal mortality, granted their reproductive organs have not fully matured. These issues of concern are not understood by the cultures that practice the custom of forced underage marriage, and to ensure the rights of young girls do not continue to be violated, it is up to social services to focus on promoting educational strategies that deter the practice and seek the enforcement of laws that condemn underage marriage.
The audios of young girls in the far north region of the country, and another young girl who was oppressed but conquered is a 16-year-old Pakistani who was shot last year. She is called Malala, and she has so far won the European Union Nobel Peace Prize, and she survived a Taliban gun attack after school on October 9, 2012. She is widely considered as world's bravest girl. As for Hansen Chanji, he tells us in the following report.
Malala Yousafzai is 16 years old and known worldwide only by her first name, Malala. She was shot on the head by Taliban gunmen in October 2012 to have spoken up for the right of girls to be educated. In 2008, female education in Pakistan was threatened by a dire warning issued by Taliban demanding a stop in female education within a month. The biggest victim of Taliban activities in Swat was girls' schools and girls' education. Malala, who didn't want her future to be imprisoned in her 4 walls and just cooking and giving birth, stood up against the Taliban by denouncing their activities on her blog and advocating for female education. As she walked out of school on October 9, 2012, her life changed. She was shot while in the bus. Nobody thought they would hear her voice again, but she braced the odds and recovered from the shot in a miraculous recovery. Born in 1997, Malala has lived to become an icon of courage and hope, a young girl with a drive to achieve. She chronicled her hope to keep going to school and her fears for the future of Swat with growing terrorism and extremism in Pakistan. At 16, she won the European Union Human Rights Nobel Peace Prize. The Pakistani schoolgirl was also named one of Times Magazine's most influential people. She is described as being precocious, confident, and assertive, an icon to emulate and a driving force for girls' education, the world's bravest girl, Malala.
The world's bravest girl indeed. For Hansen Chanji ending the report, we stay with you to talk about the crucial encounter between the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon and Tunisia built for this Sunday in Tunisia. And just to note that the Lions have been intensifying preparations. You tell us in the following report that you take a look at the head-to-head meeting of the both teams. We are talking about the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon and Tunisia.
The two teams, the Katesh Eagles of Tunisia and Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, have met 16 times in the history of football in 6 different competitions. Cameroon has won 8 of the games, drawn 6 and lost 2. On February 5, 1967, Tunisia trashed Cameroon 4-0 in an AFCON qualifiers in Tunis. On August 16, same year, Cameroon revenged in the return leg with a 2-0 victory, but could not qualify for the 1968 Africa Cup of Nations in Ethiopia. Both countries have met 4 times at the African Nations Cup, with Cameroon winning 2 games and drawing 2. On March 5, 1982, Tunisia played a 1-1 tie with Cameroon. On February 10, 2000, Cameroon beat Tunisia 3-0. March 9, 2008, the Lions won the Katesh Eagles 3-2, and both separated on a 2-2 tie on the 21st of January 2010. The Katesh Eagles and the Indomitable Lions have played 6 international friendlies with a litany of draws. On December 1, 1968, Cameroon beat Tunisia 4-2. November 8, 1981, both teams drew 1-1. The same scores were recorded on November 10, 1981 and 26th of February 1986. On August 5, 1987, Tunisia lost at home 1-3 to Cameroon. If one were to go on paper, Cameroon stands a better chance of dismantling the defense mechanism of the Tunisian national side after dominating the head-to-head statistics. Tunisia have never beaten Cameroon in any FIFA World Cup competition. The Katesh Eagles are running in for their 5th participation in the World Cup, while the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon are eyeing a 7th participation.
The report there by Fohansen Chanji brings us to the end of this segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. Good evening to you once again, viewers. Welcome to join us tonight on Talking Point. We are going to be talking about the National Orientation Day that is being commemorated today. Our guest tonight is an academic counselor. Good evening to you, Mr. Oka Ekboeku, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me.
Like I indicated, we are going to be talking about the National Orientation Day that is being commemorated today, the 11th of its kind, when many, I should say, parents and students are still to know who should orientate them as far as their career is concerned, as far as their academics are also concerned. Now, there is this problem of counselors, academic counselors to be more specific, not having much to do because students hardly come to them. Do you face a similar situation? Are you a busy man, I should ask?
Yeah, really I am. Really I am. For the past 15 years that I've been in this career, I think I'm a busy man. If we talk about students and parents not meeting the counselors, I think you're partially right, because when we look at the ratio, student counselor ratio, I think is very disproportionate. In principle, we're supposed to have a single counselor for 300 students maximum. But unfortunately, in our Cameroonian context, more often than not, we find a counselor with no less than 2,000 students, if at all there is a counselor at all. Because in many institutions, we don't have counselors. In many towns even, we don't have counselors. So from this perspective, I think many parents will complain of not being able to meet counselors. That is right.
The parents, the one complaining, are counselors actually available? Are they really duty conscious? That is actually the problem that's on the table. Academic counselors really duty conscious? Are they performing their job?
Generally, guidance counselors or academic counselors perform their job. They are busy, But I wouldn't want to say that this is a perfect situation. I don't want to paint it perfectly, because we always have persons who will not, who for one reason or another may not be delivering the goods. But there are also situations where the environment may not be conducive enough for the guidance counselor to deliver the good. Like I said a few minutes ago, if a counselor has to, work for and with 2,000 students or 1,000 students, it is practically impossible for a human being to be able to do such a job under such conditions.
So what could be the reason for that? A counselor per 2,000 students, but the law binding the profession is talking about a counselor per 300 students. Now we see it is not only ×2, but more than enough. So what could be the reason for that?
I think it is one of our illnesses, or of getting from the fact that we are a developing country, because it is not only the counseling field that suffers this. You equally have so many other professions like medicines within the medical field, like even the teachers with whom we work. You hardly find. In fact, we are in a situation where the training of counselors is almost is not proportionate to the population, the growing population that we have. Remember, the counseling service is still relatively new in our environment, in our society.
What do you mean by it's new?
Relatively new in the sense that, unlike our immediate colleagues who are teachers, the counselors within our context, I mean the Cameroonian context, this guidance and counseling came in as late as the 80s. When we really started training guidance counselors, Cameroonian guidance counselors. Before then, we had expatriates who used to help us from time to time. So
we are talking about over 2 decades now, more than 20 years.
But it's still, if you look at the population growth too, and the resources that we have, that the country has, you agree with me that it's not that easy for counselors to be trained who will cover this. But I think it is moving gradually and on a positive note, especially given the fact that we have more of these counselors being trained in some other universities. Remember, like some of us, when we were undergoing our training, the training was only in the University of Yaoundé. Now we have University of Maroua, we have the University of Bamenda that is training counselors, and even the University of Boya, we are in the Department of Education. So I think within the next few years, we are going to have a better student counselor ratio.
Talking about the place of an academic counselor in a life of a particular student, do you just come in when the child is already in the secondary school, or you come in before a child gets to secondary school or to the university? Is the place of the academic counselor to talk to the student? You choose this particular subject because of this, and you should do this because of that, taking into account the child's background, the child's historical and academic background as well. So where does the academic counselor come in?
I think the counselor here, remember what we're doing, we're not limiting ourselves to only to academic counseling. We guidance counselors, so we cover the whole student's life, and it is a long life process. No, it's not only for secondary school students. It is a long life process. Unfortunately, like I said, sometimes at the level of the primary schools, in fact, it is almost inexistent. Because
but is that not a big problem?
That is a real problem that we have, because by the time the student gets to secondary school, like you rightly said, you're getting into the history of that child, and the history starts from the day the child is born. So if you're getting into that history when the child is 10 or 12, when they get to secondary school, then it becomes a little bit problematic. However, they say the most beautiful woman cannot give what she has. So we are trying to, within our environment, given the circumstances, to do our best to see that even when the student comes in at the level of secondary school, we try to see how we can patch up what would have been done.
And I should say that more than 70% of students who graduate maybe from a secondary school have never consulted the service of a guidance counselor. What is the impact?
The impact, if one were to talk about impact, I think it has a negative impact, because most often than not, you have students who fail examinations because, for one reason, not because they are stupid. In our jargon, we avoid that. We don't have such terms. A student who is dull or stupid. No, but the fact that for one reason or another, the student may not be able to to produce what nature has endowed them with. If the counselor were to come in, it would be better. But unfortunately, most often than not, these students, they are not opportune to have a psychologist who is a counselor to help them through. So the effect of that, it has a rippling effect on the society. That's why we find too many students failing exams. That's why we find many students, even those of them who succeed with
and the high rate of unemployment in the country is highly blamed on as a result of the fact that many Cameroonians who leave school today are not guided.
Exactly. Because remember, we have three major aspects within the counseling domain. We empower the students to learn, we empower them to learn, to live, and we empower them to work.
So how much have you been doing? If the students cannot come to you, what are the counselors doing to go closer to the students?
No, we live with students because that's even the more reason why counselors are being sent into schools. Because formerly it used to be at the level of the delegation, but now we are in schools. So we are moving very closer. But like I said, if we were to set aside the problem of the ratio, student-counselor ratio, then I think we're moving because we have programs that permit us to move very close to the students.
But you still have a very long way to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Okai-Ibekwe, for joining us tonight on Talking Point, and we hope to have you some other time again.
No, I will always be there whenever you call my assistance.
Of course, we should be thanking you for coming and to our viewers. We thank you so much for having joined us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on ETV. Wishing you a blessed weekend and a blessed stay, of course, in the company of our programs.